The elevator doors slid open with a silent hiss, depositing Detective Marissa Lane onto the polished marble floor of the penthouse lobby. She paused at the threshold, allowing her eyes to adjust to the warm glow of recessed lighting reflecting off the floor-to-ceiling windows. Through the glass, the city of Miami unfurled beneath her. Tangerine sidewalks, neon signs shimmering like constellations, and Biscayne Bay stretching out beyond, an endless sheet of glass kissed by the late afternoon sun. Marissa's heel clicked against the marble as she crossed the room toward the master suite. Along the hallway, abstract paintings, splashes of cerulean and rose, hung perfectly straight, illuminated by spots that made the colors flicker and dance. The air smelled faintly of vanilla and something harsher, a hint of antiseptic that marred the otherwise tranquil atmosphere. At the bedroom door, a uniformed officer stepped aside. "Detective, we've secured the scene," he said quietly. Marissa nodded and slipped into the room. Inside, the master bath was a scene of brutal contrast. Pristine white subway tiles lined the walls, interrupted only by a single pool of crimson on the oversized terrazzo floor. The freestanding clawfoot tub, usually a statement of luxury, stood twisted on its side, its porcelain surface cracked and stained. Shards of a shattered vanity mirror lay, like broken promises, around the body of Julia Davenport. Julia herself was more than a victim. She was a study in contradictions. A swirl of auburn hair fanned out across the tiles, each strand catching in the blood that pooled beneath her temple. Her silk robe, a pale lilac embroidered with orchids, was torn at the shoulder, revealing the stark bruise spreading across her collarbone. One hand lay limp on the ground. In the other, a single orchid petal had been pressed, as if someone had tried to soften violence with beauty. Detective Lane crouched beside her, careful not to disturb the scene. She noted the positioning of Julia's limbs, both legs slightly curled, as though she had tried to curl into herself at the last moment. The expression on Julia's face was one of shock and betrayal. Eyes half open, lips parted as if she had been about to speak. "Cause of death: blunt force trauma to the temple," reported the medical examiner, stepping forward. He tapped the cracked perfume bottle lying beside Julia's hand. "Weapon appears to be this," he continued, voice low. "We'll send it for prints and fiber analysis, but I doubt we'll find fingerprints, likely wiped clean." Marissa stood and surveyed the room with a practiced eye. No sign of forced entry. Sliding door to the balcony was locked from the inside. The lock on the front door registered as engaged in the security logs. Whoever came here that night had a key. Beyond the bathroom, the bedroom stayed immaculate. A king-size bed made with precision, bedside tables free of clutter, a vanity untouched save for an open lipstick and a single strand of hair caught on the edge. On the dresser, a framed photograph. Julia in a sundress on the Amalfi Coast, smiling as wind tousled her hair. Beside it, a more recent picture of Julia laughing on the beach with Leo Ramirez, tan, muscular, his arm draped possessively around her shoulders. "Leo Ramirez," Marissa murmured, tracing the photo with her eyes. "The golden boy." A soft beep from Marissa's phone interrupted her thoughts. A text from Officer Chun. "His car is still in the garage. No one's heard from him since 2:30 a.m. Marissa pocketed her phone. "He was here that night. He has motive, opportunity, and now he's missing." She turned back to the tub. "We're looking at a live-in boyfriend with a history of brief romances, and a wall full of escort profiles on his laptop from the nightstand drawer." Officer Chin tapped open the drawer and revealed a laptop, screen dead, but with dozens of open browser tabs bookmarked to exclusive escort services. He kept files on his other dates too, Chin added, scrolling through cache thumbnails. Marissa exhaled. He objectified her the moment she opened her heart and wallet. But who ended whom? She rose and moved to the window, looking down at the swimming pool where a lone deck chair floated. Unoccupied. Let's canvass the building staff. Every cleaner, every doorman, every maintenance tech. Someone must have noticed unusual activity at 2 a.m. And check security logs. Not just cameras, but key card swipes. Whoever used her key next might be the killer. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the penthouse lights flicked on one by one, illuminating the empty cocktail glasses on the balcony table and the faint scent of expensive champagnes. Somewhere in the city, Leo Ramirez was running out of places to hide, and Detective Lane was determined to corner him before he struck again. Detective Lane left the penthouse under tight police escort and descended the gleaming marble stairwell to the building's lobby, her mind still circling the violence she'd just witnessed. She needed context. Who was Julia Davenport beyond the victim in those bloody tiles? Why had she invited danger into her sanctuary? The next morning, Lane sat across from Julia's closest friend and former business partner, Helena Morales, in a sunlit cafe a few blocks from the high-rise. Helena, a sharp-eyed woman in her early 50s with sleek black hair and a designer blazer, stirred her coffee absently. Across the table stood 2 steaming cappuccinos and a half-eaten croissant. Julia was restless, Helena began, voice low. Money wasn't an issue. She had everything a woman could want: trips, penthouses, art. But after her divorce, she was lonely. She paused, searching Lane's face. That's when Leo arrived. Lane nodded. The personal trainer. Helena chuckled darkly. Personal trainer, plaything, accomplice. He wore a lot of hats in her life. He started with circuits and lunges in her gym 2 years ago. She watched him from the cardio machines, first by chance, then by choice. Helena picked up her pastry. You should have seen the way she looked at him, like she'd rediscovered youth. Her posture straightened, her laughter got louder. She splurged on expensive workout sessions, exotic smoothies, even a private yoga instructor, all to impress him. She called him her forever trophy. But trophies break. Lane folded her hands on the table. Did she ever express doubts? Not at first. Helena's eyes flicked to the window, as though someone passed by who carried a memory. Then the gifts started piling up: designer bags, jewelry, a new BMW. He accepted everything, smiled his $1,000,000 smile, and left. She'd sit for days in that penthouse, waiting for his texts. When they came, sometimes hours late, she'd replay them like sermons. Lane took notes on her pad. Did anyone, friends or staff, warn her? Helena exhaled slowly. I tried. I told her, Julia, he's using you. But you can't reason with a woman who's starving for affection. She told me sternly, Helena, I earned this life. He's earned his place in it. Understood? He's earned his place. She tapped her finger as if recalling exact phrasing. Lane sipped her cappuccino, grimacing at the bitterness. What about his background? Did she know much about him? Helena shrugged. He was vague. Born in Miami, he'd say, or trained in Havana. He always avoided family questions, laughed it off. But Julia never pressed, until late last year, when she found him at a small duplex in Little Havana. Overnight, he claimed FUBER on his card, but she told me she'd worked it out with his landlord. She was determined to keep him close. Helena leaned forward, voice dropping conspiratorially. Then came the call from that unknown number. Threats about the other girl. But Julia was never afraid. She reveled in drama. She told me, if he steps out of line, I'll step in. She even drafted a restraining order against him, and signed, but ready. She became the hunter. Detective Lane glanced at her watch. And when did the relationship sour completely? Helena put down her spoon. 2 weeks ago, she flew to Palm Beach for a gala, and Leo barely sent a half-fun text. When she returned, he looked right through her. No more weekday brunches, no more private workouts. Only excuses. She shook her head. She confronted him. He slapped her, her first bruise. She liked it in a strange way, said it felt real. Lane's pen hovered. She liked it. Helena nodded. She told me it reminded her she was alive. Said she missed the thrill of conquest more than actual comfort. But that night, Julia's last entry in her journal. She wrote, he's mine, or he's nothing. Then she scheduled their final session for 2 a.m. under the guise of a late fitness audit. Outside the cafe window, the sun climbed higher. Lane closed her notebook. Thank you, Ms. Morales. Your insight helps. Helena reached across the table and squeezed Lane's hand. Please catch him, detective. He's more dangerous than he appears. Lane stood, sliding the notebook into her coat pocket. As she exited the cafe, she passed an upscale boutique where mannequins in silk dresses gleamed. The facade of glamour and wealth reminded her of the penthouse's shattered innocence. Leo Ramirez was a chameleon, at once devoted lover, calculating predator, and now a murderer on the run. Detective Lane hailed a cab, determined to trace the last known locations stamped on Leo's bank transactions. She'd visit that little Havana duplex, the building's tenants, and the weekend bar where he was spotted. Somewhere between fashion shows and gym sessions, a trail of broken hearts and broken rules would lead her to him. But Lane also knew this case wasn't just about catching a killer. It was about unraveling a toxic obsession, one where power, money, and desire collided in a deadly embrace. And that, she realized as the cab pulled away, would be the most dangerous path of all. Detective Lane arrived at the Little Havana duplex before noon, the Miami sun already blazing overhead. The narrow street was lined with pastel-colored stucco buildings, their wrought iron balconies draped in drying laundry. A nearby bakery sent waves of warm, sweet air out its open door, but Lane barely registered it. Her focus was on the peeling door of apartment 2B, Leo's reputed haunt. She flashed her badge at the landlord, Senor Alvarez, a gaunt man with a mustache and hawkish eyes. He led her up a creaking staircase. He rented this place under Marla Jennings's name. Alvarez murmured, wiping sweat from his brow. But I never saw her here. Only that kid, Leo. He paid in cash, always on time. Lane nodded, stepping into the cramped living room. A threadbare couch faced a small TV. The walls were adorned with faded salsa posters. Empty soda cans and protein shake bottles littered a low table. On the floor lay a single high-heeled sandal, scuffed and abandoned. Any sign of this other girl? Lane asked. Alvarez shook his head. He came and went at odd hours. I heard music, sometimes romantic Spanish ballads, and silence. Detective Lane moved toward the kitchenette, a smattering of old dishes in the sink. On the counter, she spotted a single Polaroid photograph. Leo and a young woman, faces pressed close, both smiling broadly. The woman had dark hair, cascading in waves, large hoop earrings, and a red sundress that matched the vibrant rug beneath their feet. Who is this? Lane asked, holding up the photo. Alvarez peered over. Never saw her in person. Leo only ever came alone. But the way he kept that picture, she meant something to him. Lane slipped on gloves and placed the photo in an evidence bag. She snapped a few more shots of the apartment. The unmade bed where the sheets were still twisted, the lipstick-stained coffee mug on a chipped nightstand. The makeup compact cracked open as if tossed in haste. Back in her car, Lane studied the Polaroid. The woman's eyes held defiance, but her smile looked forced, like someone posing under pressure. Lane noted the distinctive tattoo on the inside of the girl's left wrist. 3 small stars trailing toward her elbow. That, she thought, could be her key. She drove to the Wynwood district, a hotspot for tattoos and artsy parlors. Street murals splashed every block with color. Lane parked near FaZe's tattoo studio, its glass door plastered with designs, tribal motifs, floral sleeves, abstract geometry. Inside, the buzz of needle machines filled the air. A tattoo artist with ink-splattered jeans looked up curiously as she entered. Detective Lane, she said, showing her badge. I'm looking for information about a young woman, around 19 or 20, with 3-star tattoos on her left arm. You wouldn't happen to have any records. The artist frowned, swabbing tools. We require client consent to share info, ma'am. But I might have seen something. Let me check my appointment book. She flipped through pages, and my memory. Let's see. Here. R. Rosario, June 10th. Small stars on left wrist. Fits your description. Rosario, first name? Lane asked. Lena. The artist replied, leaning back. Lena Rosario. She came in last month for touch-ups. She was with a guy. Dark hoodie, looked rough. He waited outside. Lane's pulse quickened. Can you show me the design? The artist pointed to the stencil on the wall. 3 delicate black stars. identical to those in the Polaroid. Lane took a photo and thanked her, promising to follow up with a call. Back in the car, Lane felt the pieces clicking into place. Lena Rosario, the other girl Leo had been seeing, possibly a witness or a suspect. She keyed in a search for Lena Rosario Miami, and her police database spat back an address, a low-slung bungalow just north of Little Havana. Within minutes, Lane's cruiser rolled up to the modest home. The lawn was overgrown, the front door unlatched. She drew her weapon and pushed inside. The interior was dim, curtains drawn. A single lamp cast a pool of light over a cluttered dining table pile with fashion magazines, lipstick tubes, and a half-empty bottle of rose. Lane called out softly, "Lena Rosario? Miami PD, open up." There was no answer. Lane moved methodically through the house. A narrow hallway, 2 small bedrooms, each with a single bed. On one bed lay a red sundress, identical to the one in the Polaroid, and a pair of dusty sandals by the door. In the second bedroom, Lane found the desk, its drawers ajar, papers strewn. Photographs of Lena and Julia at various art galleries, their smiles genuine, captured on Lena's phone. A note in Julia's handwriting, "Thank you for being there." Jay hovered over a memory box. Lane crouched to inspect the box. Inside, a small stack of letters, a pressed orchid petal, and a USB drive. She bagged everything carefully, then retreated to the doorway, only to see movement. Lena stood at the threshold of the hallway, pale-faced, clutching a blanket around her shoulders. Her tattoo glowed faintly in the lamp's light. "I don't want trouble," Lena said, voice trembling. "He said he'd kill me if I talked." Lane holstered her weapon. "You're safe now. I have questions, and I want the truth about Julia Davenport's death." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "I loved her. She saved me once. But Leo, he was dangerous." As Lena led Lane back into the living room, the detective realized the case had deepened. Not a simple revenge killing, but a twisted triangle of affection and betrayal. The other girl held the next piece of the puzzle, and Lane was determined to hear her story before anyone else got hurt. The living room felt smaller now that Detective Lane had laid out her evidence on the coffee table. The photograph of Lena and Julia, the pressed orchid petal, the USB drive, each item a testament to a connection far deeper than Julia's fling with Leo. Lena sat on the faded floral couch, shoulders hunched, blanket pooled in her lap. Detective Lane and Officer Chun took seats opposite her, notebooks in hand. "Lena," Lane began gently, "thank you for talking with us. I know this is difficult, but we believe you have information that can solve Julia's murder." Lena swallowed hard, eyes darting to the orchid petal. "She gave that to me the night before she died." She whispered. Julia, she was so kind. She paid my rent, helped me get a scholarship to art school. She said I reminded her of herself when she was young." Officer Chin leaned forward. "What happened between you and Leo?" Lena's fingers tightened around the blanket. "He found me at the studio where I painted murals for free. He said I was his muse. Told me I'd go far if I stuck with him." Her voice cracked. "I believed him. Until he started lying." Lane nodded at Chun to press play on the laptop. The DV tapes footage, the cabin scene with Leo muttering, "She owned me," filled the screen. Lena's face blanched. "He said those things to me, too," she said, tears glimmering. "He told me Julia was crazy, that she threatened him. He said she was controlling." Lena closed her eyes and drew a deep breath. "He used her money to set me up here, got me a car, an apartment, then he disappeared for days. When I called, he'd say he was with business friends. I knew he was lying." Lane clicked off the video. "When did you realize Leo was dangerous?" Lena looked up, eyes haunted. "The night before Julia died. Julia invited me here, said she wanted to introduce me properly. I was scared, but she insisted. She reached for the pressed petal. She gave me this and told me to keep it safe. She said, if he ever hurts you, show this. He'll know he messed up." She laughed, but her eyes were serious. Officer Chun tilted his head. "What else did Julia say?" "She said she wanted to end things with Leo." Lena's voice trembled as she held back sobs. "She believed in karma. She said she'd test him, see if he'd stay when the money stopped flowing. Lane exchanged a glance with Chun. And did he stay? Lena nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. He couldn't. He came over here furious, slammed the door, yelled that Julia was ruining his life. He said, "You're not worth it without her money." Then he left. Lane jotted down notes. Where did he go next? He went back to Julia's penthouse, Lena said. I saw him get into a black BMW on surveillance when I checked her building cameras. He was reckless. He didn't care if anyone saw. Lena stopped, gathering courage. I followed him. I wanted to save Julia. Detective Lane leaned in. What did you see? He arrived around 2:15 a.m., Lena whispered. He looked broken. He pounded on the door. When she opened it, she tried to calm him. I saw through the lobby camera. She put her arms around him, stroked his hair. He slapped her. Lena's voice broke. I ran back here. I didn't know what to do. Officer Chin closed his notebook. Did you hear anything else? Any sounds? Lena swallowed. A scream. A single strained scream. Like she was reaching for something or someone, she said. Then nothing. Lane stood and paced toward the window, looking out at the Miami skyline. Lena, your testimony places Leo at the scene, gives us his motive, and shows Julia's plan. But we still need to know, did you see anyone else enter the penthouse that night? Lena shook her head. No, it was just him and Julia. Detective Lane returned to her seat. Thank you. Your courage in coming forward may have saved other lives. She closed her notebook. We'll keep you safe, Lena. We need you, in case there's more to uncover. After Lena left with Officer Chun, Lane sat alone amid the scattered evidence. The pieces aligned. Julia's ultimatum, Leo's obsession, the unfiled restraining order, Lena's loyalty. Yet a question nagged at her. Why Julia pressed the perfume bottle's orchid petal in her own hand as she lay dying. Lane opened the USB drive on her laptop, a series of encrypted files. She typed in the password, Julia's favorite phrase, earn my place. The first file unlocked, a voice recording. It was Julia's voice, measured yet trembling. If you're listening to this, I'm gone. Leo was never mine. He belongs to chaos. But I have one last gift. He keeps all my jewelry in a safe. The code is 1925. Use it to pay for Lena's dreams. Lane's breath caught. The code, Julia's birth year, was the safe's combination. And the safe held Leo's next target, $200,000 in cash stashed for emergencies. She sat back, piecing the final tableau. Julia's plan to control Leo by cutting off her wealth. Lena's unwitting role as witness. Leo's violent unraveling. Julia died knowing she could still protect Lena and punish Leo. Detective Lane tapped her phone. Give me a warrant for that penthouse safe. And alert all units. Leo may return for his money. As the Miami sun dipped low, casting the room in the gold of dusk, Lane realized the case's true magnitude. This was not just a crime of passion, but a calculated endgame set in motion by a woman who refused to be defeated, even in death. Detective Lane and her team arrived at the high-rise just after sunset. The lobby was silent, except for the soft click of security cameras swiveling overhead. Inside her coat pocket, Lane's warrant authorized opening Julia's safe and setting a trap for Leo. She glanced at her lieutenant. Team Alpha to Suite 2703, she whispered into her radio. By the time they reached Julia's front door, plainclothes officers had discreetly taken positions in the hallway and balcony. Lane's heart raced as she swiped the master key card, lifted from evidence, to unlock the door. The penthouse felt colder than before, the scent of orchids now tinged with dust and stale air. Lane paused, listening for movement within the bedroom beyond the living area. She steeled herself and stepped through. The study door, where Julia kept her journals and valuables, stood slightly ajar. Lane signaled two officers to fan out. One covered the doorway. The other knelt beside the safe hidden behind a movable art panel. Combination is 1-9-2-5, Lane murmured, recalling Julia's message. The officer dialed the numbers. With a soft click, the safe swung open, revealing neatly stacked bundles of $100 bills, several pieces of jewelry, and a sleek pistol in a velvet-lined compartment. Lane raised an eyebrow. He'll come for both money and firepower. She nodded to the officer, who relocked the safe and set a silent alarm to alert them the moment it was opened again. Outside the study door, officers blended into the shadows. Lane motioned to Chief Ramirez. When the safe is touched, move in. No mistakes. Ramirez's jaw set. Understood. They waited. Minutes stretched. The only sound was the distant hum of Miami traffic and the muted drip of air conditioning. Lane's gaze flicked to the balcony doors, her only exit point for Leo. Suddenly, the study alarm blinked red. Lane's hand flew to her holster. Now, officers burst into the room as the safe door creaked open. A figure in a dark hoodie slipped in, quick as a striking snake. He paused, reaching for the cash bundles, but froze when he saw the line of guns aimed at him. Leo Ramirez, put your hands where I can see them, Lane commanded, stepping forward. Leo's shoulders sagged, but falling back to reveal a shock of sweaty hair. His eyes, wild, desperate, darted from the pistol on the desk to the officers. He raised his empty hands slowly. Detective Yuhao, his voice cracked. Lane holstered her weapon. You killed Julia Davenport. You beat Ms. Jennings' sister, kidnapped Marla, and now you came for her money. It's over. Leo staggered, dropping to his knees. He buried his face in his hands. She made me do it, he whispered. She was never mine, she owned me. Ramirez cuffed him roughly. As they led him away, Leo's eyes locked on Lane. She's still alive, he rasped. She'll come back. Lane exchanged glances with Ramirez. We'll see. Leo Ramirez sat under the harsh fluorescent light of the Willow Grove PD interrogation room. His wrists lay in cold steel cuffs, and Detective Lane's eyes bored into him across the table. The air tasted of stale coffee and fear. Lane opened the file. Leo, you came back to Julia's penthouse for one reason, the money. But you already had other women, other lives. Why kill her? Leo's jaw worked, but no words came. Lane slid the photo of Julia's orchid petal, still stained with blood, across the table. She pressed this in her hand as she died. A message. You know why. He stared at the petal, voice low. She thought she could control me with money and sentiment. She had spreadsheets of my expenses, receipts for my flights, dossiers on my exes. I was her project, her puppet. Officer Chun produced a transcript of Julia's last voice memo. Lane pressed play. Leo, if you're watching this, know that I've already won. The safe code is set to protect what matters. Lena's future. You can't let go of me, so I've let go of you. Leo flinched. She was unhinged, he spat. She loved the drama more than me. She wanted to break me. Lane leaned forward. But you snapped. You beat her, then struck the fatal blow. Witnesses place you on the balcony at 2:15 a.m. Security logs confirm the door unlocked for your keycard. You planned it. He closed his eyes. I didn't plan to kill her. I lost control. His voice cracked. She humiliated me in front of Lena. Said I was worthless without her largesse. Chun interjected. Lena saw you at the door that night. She heard you slap Julia. She ran. Came here to warn us. You murdered Julia within minutes. Leo's gaze flicked to the one-way glass. I didn't care anymore, he murmured. She had me cornered. I thought if she died, I'd be free. Lane watched him for a long moment. You were never free, Leo. You're still chained by your obsession. She collected Julia's journal entries. You framed the whole story. A sugar mommy who needed to be taught a lesson. But in the end, you trapped yourself. Leo remained silent, tears tracing lines down his cheeks. The confession was complete. As they let him out, Lane lingered on the doorway. The room's stark walls seemed to pulse with Julia's final act. A woman who plotted her lover's downfall, even as she faced her own death. Outside, the Miami night pressed against the station windows, humid and heavy. Lane knew the next steps. Evidence would secure his conviction. But the real tragedy lay in the twisted dance of power and love that had led them here. The call came in just before dawn. Sparks in the night sky. The crackle of flames echoing through the pine forest outside Baton Rouge. Detective Lane and her tactical team raced down the highway in unmarked SUVs, sirens muted to avoid alarming anyone in the deserted rural stretch. As they approached the winding dirt road, headlights pierced columns of smoke rising above the tree line. At the charred remains of the cabin, orange embers still glowed among collapsed beams. Fire trucks and deputies circled the perimeter, their silhouettes etched against the orange haze. Lane's stomach tightened. This was the scene from the tape, the place where Leo had last been seen alive, now reduced to ash. She ducked under the crime scene tape and stepped carefully over blackened earth. The air carried the acrid tang of burned wood and plastic. In the center of the ruin, a warped steel door hung half open, leading into an interior turned to rubble. Lane knelt beside a scorched log and found fragments of photo, Leo's hoodie, charred, and something else, a lock of hair, bleached white by fire. "Over here," called Officer Chun, voice low. He pointed to a flattened metal box, its latch fused shut by heat. The CSI team had already sprayed it with coolants. Lane pried it open, revealing a stack of charred notebooks and a single intact tape recorder, its casing cracked but surprisingly intact. "This is it," Chun said, producing a small evidence bag. Lane slipped the recorder inside and stood, surveying the devastation. "Any sign of other bodies?" Deputies shook their heads. "Two sets of remains," one said. "One larger, one smaller. We've sent samples for dental and DNA, but only Leo matches so far." He hesitated. "The other, we can't identify yet." Lane's heart sank. Marla Jennings, the elegant real estate broker who vanished in Miami, and now, a nameless victim alongside Leo. She closed her eyes, recalling Lena's words. "I think he's broken." Had he dragged Marla here for some final confrontation? Or had someone else set the fire to erase any trace of them both? Back at the station, Lane watched the tape recorder's playback. The cabin footage ended with Leo's chilling whisper, "I'm already dead." But this tape, a newer recording, had Marla's voice, fragile and urgent. Marla, voice trembling, "Leo, I can't do this anymore. You said I reminded you of her, but I'm not her. I'm not Julia. Please, just let me go." Leo, angry, slurred, "You're my chance at a new life. My ticket out. You leave, I lose everything." Marla, voice rising, "I'm not your property. I deserve more, deserve to live." Leo, soft, regretful, "You don't understand, she made me. Julia gave me everything. But you..." Sound of glass shattering. Marla, scream, "No, Leo, please stop." Leo, voice breaking, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean..." Tape cuts off amid crackling static. Lane's hand trembled. "He killed her," she whispered. Then he set the fire. She rewound and listened again to catch any background sounds. A match striking, the rush of accelerant pouring. The evidence was damning. Premeditation and arson. Days later, the lab confirmed the second set of remains as Marla Jennings. Both victims had blunt force trauma to the head before the blaze. Leo's final act of desperation after murdering Julia and attacking Lena. Lena's courage in coming forward had saved her life, but couldn't protect Julia or Marla. In court, Chief Prosecutor Angela Kim reviewed Lane's report. "We'll charge Leo posthumously in the indictments for Julia Davenport and Marla Jennings. We'll also list him as prime suspect in the arson. His confession on the DV tape is the smoking gun." Judge Lawson nodded gravely. Detective Lane returned to Miami to oversee the memorial for Marla. Among the mourners, Julia's friends and Lena gathered, united by their losses. Lane watched as Lena placed a single white orchid on Marla's casket, the flower's fragile petals a poignant reminder of two lives cut short. That evening, Lane stood alone on Julia's penthouse balcony, the city lights twinkling below. She held the recorder in her hand, the final fragment of a deadly obsession. Leo's whispered words, "I'm already dead," had carried through every twist of this case, from penthouse to duplex, from city to forest. He died in the flames he ignited, leaving behind a trail of broken hearts and unanswered questions. But Lane knew one thing: justice, however delayed, had been served. And in the quiet aftermath, she let the recorder rest, its secrets finally laid to rest in the darkness. The courtroom atmosphere was electric as Prosecutor Angela Kim laid Leo Ramirez's final evidence before the jury. Detective Lane sat in the gallery, notebook balanced on her knee, watching the faces of Julia's and Marla's families, haggard, hollowed but resolute. Outside, Miami's humid breeze rattled palm fronds against courthouse windows, a quiet reminder that life goes on even in the shadow of tragedy. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict that felt as inevitable as it was too late. Leo Ramirez, already dead by his own hand, was found guilty on all counts. First-degree murder of Julia Davenport, first-degree murder of Marla Jennings, attempted murder of Lena Rosario, and felony arson. The judge, her voice measured, pronounced the sentences posthumous. Leo would remain infamous, but beyond the physical reach of justice. The families released a joint statement. "We find no solace in his conviction, for 2 women are gone forever. But we hope this verdict offers a measure of closure, and that Leo's story warns others of the lethal power of obsession." Detective Lane stepped outside into the late afternoon sun, her badge heavy on her coat. She watched Lena, Julia's friend Helena, and Marla's sister Grace link arms for support. Their grief was far from over, yet they stood together, an unspoken solidarity forged in shared loss. Months later, Lena Rosario sat in her own art studio, a renovated garage behind a safe house provided by the department. Sunlight poured through skylights, illuminating canvases that brimmed with color, abstract swirls of orchid petals, fractured mirrors, and phoenix-like forms rising from ashes. She had found therapy in painting, each stroke a reclamation of her life. Detective Lane visited one afternoon, admiring a large triptych centered on 3 black stars, Lena's tattoo, surrounded by delicate white blooms. "You've come a long way," Lane said softly. Lena smiled, her eyes bright. "Julia saved me, Detective. This studio, these canvases, they're for her. For Marla. For anyone who thought they were disposable." She paused. "And for me, so I never forget what surviving feels like." Lane tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "Your testimony broke the case wide open. You did more than survive. You brought 2 killers to light." Back in the penthouse, Helena Morales oversaw the donation of Julia's estate to charitable causes Julia had outlined in her will. Julia's Marine Arts nonprofit received funding to build art classrooms for underprivileged youth, and a scholarship in interior design was endowed at Miami-Dade College, both carrying her name. Helena traced her fingers over the polished marble of a newly installed orchid sculpture in the lobby, a permanent memorial to the woman who'd loved too fiercely. She wanted beauty in every corner of the world, Helena said to Detective Lane, who had accompanied her. Now her vision lives on. Lane closed her eyes against tears. She lost her life for that vision, but in the end it endures. Grace Delgado, Marla Jennings' sister, sat in a hotel conference room alongside a private investigator. They reviewed the remaining fragments of cabin evidence. Still more questions remained. Who started the fire? Did Leo act alone? And what became of the mysterious Jane Doe found alongside him, now identified as a local drifter named Esme Perez? As they pored over forensic reports, Grace whispered, "She was a witness, not a victim." Why was Esme there? The investigator shook his head. "We may never know, but for now, we give them names and bring some dignity to their stories." Detective Lane closed the case file and placed Leo's portrait atop the stack of closed investigations. Miami's skyline glowed beyond the window, bright, unrelenting, and full of stories yet untold. She thought of the orchid petals, the charred cabin, the penthouse's shattered mirror. Each image had burned itself into her memory. She stood and gathered her coat. Outside the precinct, the sun dipped behind the bay. Somewhere, Lena was painting her redemption. Somewhere else, Julia's scholarship recipients were drafting their first designs, and Marla's quiet nonprofit supporters were teaching art to children who'd never held a brush. In the end, Lane mused, obsession had led to death, but it also ignited acts of courage, compassion, and creation. And in that aftermath, perhaps life could rise, like a phoenix from the ashes of its darkest moments. Miami's tight-knit social circles reeled in the wake of the Ramirez tragedy. News outlets dissected every angle: the affluent sugar mommy, the strapping young trainer, the vulnerable artist protege. Zoom panels debated power dynamics and age gaps. Tabloids splashed lurid headlines. Meanwhile, Brickell's chic cafes and Wynwood's art bars whispered of betrayal and blood. Helena Morales organized a small gathering at Julia's favorite gallery space. The whitewashed walls held Julia's early design sketches, graceful curves rendered in pencil. Friends, colleagues, and art students filed in, each clutching a single orchid. They shared memories: Julia's booming laugh, her generosity, the way she championed young talent. Tears glistened under gallery lights as they placed their orchids at the base of a central sculpture, a spiraling helix of reclaimed metal and glass, symbolizing renewal. Across town, Lena Rosario hosted a more somber event at her new studio. Survivors of domestic and financial abuse mingled with art therapists and social workers. Lena displayed her Phoenix series paintings, each canvas a raw testament to suffering and survival. Attendees traced the black star tattoos emerging from pale petals, wiping tears as they saw their own stories reflected in Lena's work. A local nonprofit pledged to fund community art programs in honor of both Julia and Marla, aiming to give vulnerable youths a creative outlet before their struggles turn tragic. At Miami-Dade College, the first recipients of the Julia Davenport Scholarship presented their senior interior design projects, adaptive reuse of abandoned spaces into community hubs. One student, tearful as she unveiled her model for a children's art center, spoke of how Julia's story inspired her to use design for healing rather than mere aesthetics. Yet not all reactions were celebratory. Rumors swirled about others Leo might have exploited. Detectives quietly reopened cold case files for missing women with ties to high-end gyms and private training networks. Whispers of copycat sugar relationships prompted a citywide awareness campaign on predatory dynamics. Billboards urging "know the signs" and "consent isn't currency." Detective Lane attended a community forum on the campus of Florida International University. As panelist, she spoke plainly. Julia's case wasn't unique in its elements: wealth, desire, betrayal. But it became fatal in its imbalance of power. We must protect those who think affection can be rented and expose those who mistake kindness for ownership. She paused as students nodded, passing out resource cards for hotlines and legal aid. Outside the auditorium, pamphlets titled "When Money Meets Manipulation" fluttered in the breeze. By the one-year anniversary of Julia's death, Miami had changed. Gym memberships required mandatory counseling if members accepted extravagant gifts from clients. High-rise concierge teams underwent training to spot coercive relationships. Survivors spoke openly in podcasts, calling for reforms. The Ruiz Foundation, named after Marla and Julia's maiden names, launched a mobile art therapy van, bringing paint and hope to neighborhoods in need. Detective Lane watched these developments from her office window. The city skyline was as bright as ever, but beneath it lay new fault lines of awareness and resilience. She reflected on how tragedy had catalyzed community healing, a testament to human determination to turn darkness into light. The final pages of the case file lay neatly on Detective Lane's desk. She flipped through them one last time. Julia's journals, Lena's witness statement, Marla's farewell audio, Leo's confession tapes, and the forensic reports confirming arson. Each page chronicled a life steeped in secrets and an obsession that consumed them. As dusk settled over Biscayne Bay, Lane stepped onto the penthouse balcony one final time. The orchid sculpture in the lobby below caught the golden glow of sunset, its glass petals refracting fading light across the marble floor. She placed a single white orchid next to Julia's framed photo, a silent salute to a woman who sought control through love, then outwitted death with her own design. Far below, the art therapy van rolled through Wynwood's graffiti-tagged streets, children's laughter spilling out as they painted murals of hope. In Little Havana, Lena's studio windows displayed her latest triptych, 3 orchids blooming from ashes, the petals glowing against a dark backdrop. And in Brickell, the scholarship plaque gleamed in the lobby of the design school, bearing Julia's name and motto, "Design with Heart." Detective Lane gathered her coat and badge, feeling the case's weight finally lift. She walked past the Orchid Memorial, past the concierge desk where staff bowed in respect, and down the elevator to street level. The night air wrapped around her as she stepped onto the sidewalk, sirens faint in the distance. Before she left, she made one more stop, the old duplex on Calle Ocho. Lena had reopened apartment 2B as a community art space, where local teens learned to spray paint legal murals. Outside, Lena greeted her with paint-spattered jeans and a broad smile. "Detective," Lena said, hugging her, "I wanted you to see this." Inside, the walls glowed with vibrant portraits. Julia's smiling face, Marla's steadfast gaze, and a new image, Leo's hoodie hanging lifeless on a hook, flowers placed beneath it. A plaque read, "We remember, not to seek revenge, but to learn." Lane's eyes misted. "You've done something incredible here." Lena nodded. "We took the story's pain and gave it purpose." She glanced at a corner where an orchid vine climbed a lattice. "Life finds a way, detective." As Lane walked back to her car under swaying palm trees, she thought of the lives entwined: predator and provider, lover and witness, victim and savior. The case was closed, yet its lessons endured. That love built on power can shatter lives, but that empathy, art, and justice can rebuild them stronger than before. And with that, Detective Marissa Lane drove into the night, ready for the next call, knowing that Miami, for all its sun and glamour, would always need vigilant protectors of its darkest truths.